Good evening, everyone. Hello, and welcome to this course, Write and Publish a Book. I have been excited about this ever since someone said I should do it, and that someone is on this call. So thank you, Andorra. So collectively, we can thank Andorra for this because a lot of people who are wanting to do this, and I honestly didn't realize how much knowledge I had around this until I started putting the slides together, and I was like, holy crap, I got a lot more knowledge in this than I actually realized. And I want to encourage you. This is something that you should take away for all of you, not just for slides, presentations, but I'm telling you, there's a book in there. And I want you to think about that in terms of writing and publishing a book, because you might be thinking, oh my gosh, who am I to write a book? I don't know how. Where do I start? I'm afraid of criticism and all the head trash. Anybody understand what I'm talking about? Right? Okay. Does your head trash kind of look like what's up on the screen right there? That's what I'm talking about. It is absolute nonsense. I don't want you to get caught up in that head trash. So, what we're going to talk about today is sorry, I got to move this out of my way. It's going to drive me bananas. There we go. What we're going to talk about in terms of the agenda tonight, we're going to talk about the why and specifically the things to know before you ever put pen to paper. Or I don't know, does anybody actually do pen to paper anymore? Is that like so 1985? All right, pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, whatever it is that you do, we're going to talk about the why. We're also going to talk about the where and all the wheres to consider, all the wheres except underwears, right? So we're going to talk about all of that stuff, and just want to make sure that you guys um, reference that. So someone is sending me some sort of weird message. Okay, got it. All right. Um, so from there, we're going to talk about the where. We're going to talk about the writing, and things for when you start writing, as well as what to do along the way. There are certain things that you really need to know, and these are things that I have learned along, like doing it poorly, and it took me a lot longer because I wasn't doing some of these things here. So these are some do's, don'ts, and just best practices that I learned for me. Other things that is the most important thing, and if you don't have this, you're likely not going to get the results you want. And I'm going to tell you what that one thing is when we get there. So be patient. And then finally is publishing, some of the nuances to consider before you even get to print. So with all of those things, what I'd like to hear from you guys right now is, where are you from? Go ahead and put in the chat where you're from, what kind of business that you're in, and maybe what you're hoping to accomplish by publishing a book, because there's lots of different reasons to publish a book, right? So, where you're from, what industry are you in, and maybe why you have different reasons on writing a book. And I'll tell you what, I was putting together a course, which I'm going to talk about, a book writing course here at the end here, which I really never intended to do this. But when I was putting this together, I realized this is my stack of books right here that I have written. And Vicky, who is on this call, she was around for the very first one. She was, if you look at the top left of the screen, The Time Wealthy Investor was my very first book, and I'm incredibly proud of that book. I'm still very proud of that book, just for the nature of the fact it was a well-written book, and I really didn't know what I was doing. So I remember when I published that book, and I was kind of like, "You're welcome, world. Here it is." Right? And no one bought it. Like, no one bought it. And then I wrote The Judge, which The Judge was a much smaller book. That was about a 90-page book. So the Time Wealthy Investor book, that's about a 280-page book. The Judge is about 80 pages. So we're talking significantly smaller, but that book was, we really wasn't ever meant to sell. And um and I'll come back to that in a second when we start talking about the purpose of why we're doing this. But the second book, or the third book rather, which was the second release of the Time Wealthy Investor, which was the Time Wealthy Investor 2.0, you'll see that coming in the top middle there. That's the book that I really hang my hat on. That's the one I kind of I removed the other one from publishing. I republished the Time Wealthy Investor 2.0, and I actually hit Amazon bestseller status with that book. But I was continuing to make all sorts of mistakes, and I didn't realize what I was doing until after I had got it done. And I was thinking like, oh my gosh, Amazon bestseller is the best thing ever. No one cares. No one literally cares. Like, I know so many
Right.
people who hit Amazon bestseller status, and literally no one cares. So I'm not
Right.
I'm not saying that it's something that's not worth doing or not worth a goal worth attaining. I'm not suggesting that. But I'm just saying like if the goal is to get the book in the hands of as many people as possible, don't think that bestseller status is like the thing like that's gonna like just push you over the edge. It honestly is a vanity metric in my opinion. But again, if maybe that's your reason for writing is to become a best-selling author. That's totally fine. I'm just telling you, sometimes the juice isn't worth the squeeze on some of this stuff. If you look at the blue book, that's the latest release that I have, which is the Time Wealthy Advantage. Again, very proud of that book. That's a 300-page book. Lots to say, and I had more to say, and I was like, oh my gosh, this book is becoming a tome, so I have to trim this back. And then those four books at the bottom, they are all individual books. They look small because they are. They're about 40 pages each, and they were written for a very specific purpose, and that was for an order bump to offer with the original book, The Time Wealthy Advantage. So, all sorts of different books, all sorts of different reasons to write them, and all sorts of different styles. One was just a plain story, right? As a storybook, which was The Judge. Some of them are highly are much more technical, like the strategic one sheets, that blue book down at the bottom left. That's a very technical book, and some of them are a little bit more kind of in between all of these different things. So there's lots of different reasons, and I'm not putting this up there to impress you. It's not the reason. I'm just telling you that from a guy who literally graduated at the bottom of his class, right? Like I was number two from the bottom in high school. If I can do this, you can do this. I promise you, you have something to say that is relevant and it matters even if you feel like it's been said before by hundreds of other people in front of you. I promise you have a way of saying it that's unique to you, and someone else out there wants to hear the way you have to say it. So, with all that in mind, I'm going to talk about this at the end. If you'd like to get a signed copy, which is again cheaper on Amazon, cheaper than on Amazon, plus a free bonus gift, which I will talk about here at the end, but I don't want you getting distracted by that. If you want to get it on Amazon, that's fine, but I can offer it to you a lot cheaper and I can sign it for you. So let's talk about the why. Now, first and foremost, I'd be remiss if I wasn't at least talking a little bit about the Viper method, which is in the Time Wealthy Advantage. The Viper method is an acronym which stands for vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. Okay. So we're not going to talk about a lot of this. I'm just going to walk you this through really quickly at a very 10,000 foot level, because this alone could be about a 2 hour session. But vision is specifically where you want to go. I'm going to come back to vision here in just a second, because that is going to be the premise of our why, right? But vision is specifically where you want to go. So from a strategic perspective, as a strategist, I tend to look at things from top down. It's very natural for me to look at things from 25,000 feet, kind of come in, tinker with some stuff, and then kind of look back out and see how things are running. That's very typical for me. That's very natural state for me. If I get into the weeds and get into the gears and all that stuff, that is not the best place for me at all. So that is where I spend a lot of my time, is looking at the big picture. When you're looking at infrastructure, now infrastructure is the bones of the business, right? The infrastructure is the desks, the chairs, the software, all of those things that you kind of think of like just the boring stuff of the business, right? The desks, the chairs, the software, the phone systems, the websites, all of the property management software or management software or things like that. So if you're in real estate and you have property management software, or if you have some sort of building software or whatever else it is, and that's the sort of thing. So, and then you're looking at process. Process is how you do things. Process is broken down into two main areas, which is strategic and tactical. Now, when you're thinking about tactical, that's the day-to-day stuff in terms of how you do things. All right, that's the day-to-day how you do things. So, in other words, if for those of you who are familiar with Michael Gerber, who wrote the E-Myth, he wrote a fantastic book back in the 80s. Actually, I think it might have even been in the 70s, where the original book, The E-Myth, he wrote about systematizing everything, like making sure everything was process oriented so that the experience to the client was very symmetrical, it was just very replicable. Like it was just very, like there was no variation in the deliverable. That was really, really important in his message. So when you start thinking about the process, the tactical process, the tactical day-to-day process, how you answer the phone, how your opening procedures, your closing procedures, how you prepare bank deposits. That's process. Make sense? Everybody tracking? Okay, thank you. Very good. I'm getting some thumbs up, getting some head nods. Very good. The other side of process is strategic. And the strategic side of process is the strategic planning, right? And that carries with it three different areas of people, purpose, and promotion. The people, purpose, and promotion, that is everything that's around strategic planning that you need to, you've created this and built this warship, this battleship that's sitting in a harbor. Now you want to take it out of the harbor and go make some trouble, right? So you can't do that without a strategic plan. And the just so I'm clear, for those, where are my systems and processes people? My systems and processes people, where are you at here? Okay, I'm yep, seeing some hands. All right, very good. Thank you. So for those of you who are the systems and processes people, the tactical part of process, right? Tactical part of process and the infrastructure is where the system is. That's the system, right? So everything else before and after that supports that system. And the system exists to serve our vision. Make sense? So this is why when you're thinking about execution, execution is where all the activity happens. And when things fall apart, where are they going to fall apart? Execution. That's where it's going to fall apart. That's why execution has to have its own spot in the chain. Because if you don't define execution, where are my people who have their to-do lists of 75 items? Where are they at? I know you're in here. Come on. Let's see some hands big and high. I'm going to put both of my hands up. Okay. If it makes you feel any better, right? Right. If I had three hands, I'd put them all up, right? Thank you, Tashin. So that's what I'm talking about when you're looking, like if you have a to-do list where you have like 75 different things to do, what are you going to do? Are you going to do the most important or are you going to do the easiest thing? Generally, you do the easiest thing. It's like, okay, teeth brushed, check, right? These are the sorts of things you have to be careful of. So when you have a list of too many priorities has the same impact as having no priorities. So you have to be careful about that. So that's why execution is where I like to delineate a daily five. It's a maximum of five things that you will do every day that will move the needle towards your strategic plan. Okay, and it's also in relation to your personal vision or personal and business vision. We'll come back to that here in just a second. All right, so. The last part of this is reporting. Now, reporting, generally when you're reporting, you're either reporting lead metrics or you're reporting lag metrics. Lead metrics are simply the results of your activities, right? So the lead metrics are the activities. The lead metrics are the activities. So the lead metrics are things like, the actual things you're doing, right? So if you're on a podcast, if you booked 5 podcasts that day, that's very specific things that you do. If I put check email, that is not very specific, right? Those are hardly needle movers. Those are more administrative tasks. I'm not suggesting that they're not important. I'm not suggesting that they don't go on a list somewhere, right? That could be on a tactical to-do list, right? But it's not a daily 5. Right? So this is why it's really important when you really want to have your daily 5 coming from your execution, you're going to want to track those behaviors. You're going to want to track those activities. So your lead metrics are going to track those things. Your lag metrics are the results of those activities. Your lag metrics are the results of those activities. So if you're not getting the results you want, what do you look at? It's quite simple. You just look at your inputs. You just look at your actions. You just look at your activities and you adjust. And now you might have to say, well, am I doing enough of the right? Am I doing enough of the thing? Am I doing enough of the right thing? Am I doing too many wrong things? Right? But you can adjust that. And that's also why it's nice to have an outside accountability partner on there. So very good. Let's look at the chat real quick. I want to see where everybody is from. Thank you for joining. Andorra, you're from Columbus. I knew that. Very good. Thank you. You're wanting to write about your why and legacy. Very good. Vicky from Indianapolis. Thank you. Vicky's been a mentor of mine. I do appreciate her very, very much. She owed me nothing and gave me a stage, and I will forever be grateful for her, especially during a time when she didn't have to. She has massive experience in real estate, and is that what you want to write about, Vicky? Are you thinking about that? Okay. All right. Very good. The world would be better off if you did. Judy lives in Boston, healthcare and real estate. Feels to have info to share that will help people and would also like to speak. Very good. Port Orange, Florida, Billy, high performance coach and business strategist. And Billy is actually getting ready to release a book very soon. So this is very timely for him. And I'm really super excited about seeing that. Billy, do you have a title picked out yet?
Yes, sir. It's called Reclaim Your Power
Oh
to
man, I love it.
coincide with the Power Producer Academy. Yes,
I
sir.
love it. I love it. Reclaim your power. Awesome. So really going to encourage you to look out for his book. It's going to be, I know it's going to be phenomenal. He doesn't put out bad stuff ever. I don't think he's capable of that. Netta Flow, from New York. First book was co-authored, didn't like the publishing process. Okay. Didn't understand it and want to add value and leave a legacy. Very good. Well, I'm glad that you could join us today. Jolyn, Southeast Asia and London and screenplay and writing. Oh, very good. I'm glad you could join us today. Coach Pete, good to see you, brother. Business consultant, professional coach, create authority position, and business strategy innovation. Yeah, so writing does just exactly that. So when you write, part of being an author is being an authority, right? It's the root word, and we're not going to talk about that too much tonight, but that will be in the course that I'm going to be putting together. Is about using your authorship to be in, to become that authority and use that as a lead magnet. Tampa, Florida, real estate. Oh, that's Gary Aker. Very good. Like to speak and build networks. Would like to help open doors and get more access to more people. You can definitely do that. Gary is one of the smartest people that I know. Certainly, certainly good to know him. In the personal and spiritual development industry. Very good, Netta. Thank you much. All right, Tashin from New York. I want to share my struggles and successes to show other people with disabilities don't have to be forgotten by society and stuck in poverty. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, man. There is no quit in Tashin. That dude, there is no quit in that dude. Like Tashin, you are very much inspiration to me, and we don't really even know each other that well, but we've been around each other, and I'm very, very impressed by you. So I think I've got everybody here. Um, let's see. If I missed anybody, I'm from Mexico, currently in Chicago. I'm sorry, I can't really. Is it Alexei? I apologize if I'm butchering your name, Alexei. From Mexico, currently in Chicago, published my first novel years ago. Very good. Was unexperienced and want to do better next time. Hey, listen, I am living proof that you can screw it all up and do way better in the future. So, that's great. All right. Thank you all for putting your stuff out there. I do appreciate you. Let's get to the rest of this Viper method here that we're going to be talking about. So, the interesting thing about vision specifically, is this is where it all starts. Because if you don't have a clear vision, it's going to be very wonky and it's very going to be, your actions are going to be very disconnected and everything in life is just going to be disconnected. That's why when I reference vision, it always starts with personal vision. Personal vision is the main circuit breaker for everything. It's like the big giant circuit breaker outside at the pole. Like everything shuts down. Everything serves that. So when you get really, really clear about your personal vision, then you have a business vision that serves that personal vision. Okay.
Thank you.
So personal vision from this
Right?
perspective.
I was going to
Hey,
say,
Joe, glad you could.
I thought I saw that. I must
Coach
not
Pete,
have.
I'm going to go ahead and
They're right
mute you,
there.
brother.
Yeah, I see the
Okay. So when you're asking about personal vision is going to ask a specific question about where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? When you're looking at business vision is just going to simply say, okay, cool. How are we going to get there? Two very simple questions. And the reason why they asked in that order is because the business vision should exist to serve the personal vision. Many people who I know, when they come to me, as a strategist, they often come to me because they have a business, they're in business for themselves. Many times they're in real estate investing, but not necessarily. Many people are contractors or they own their business in some way. And I say, cool, what's your vision? What are you trying to accomplish here? And well, I'm trying to get 300 more, you know, houses sold this year. I'm trying to sell 10 million more widgets. I'm trying to whatever that thing is. Joe, I'm going to go ahead and mute you. Thank you. Um, so, uh, so the thing is that when you are those those answers are not personal vision. Those answers are very much business vision. So when you're thinking about your business vision, right? And this is why when I start asking people, yeah, but for what? Many people really struggle with that answer because they've never really it's like, well, let me make that $50,000 a month and then I'll worry about that personal vision thing. The problem is there's so many people whose life is passing them by because they've never getting there and they're aiming at the wrong target. So I'm not suggesting that business vision is irrelevant. It is very, very relevant. It just can't come first. Because the danger in creating a business vision before you create a personal vision is that you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. Let me say that again. The danger in creating a business vision before creating a personal vision is that you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. And that sucks. Ask me how I know. So, you want to create a personal vision. And again, I'm not suggesting that business vision is irrelevant because we're going to be talking about business vision in the context of three C's. Three C's. Three C's are core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Now, I know I'm talking about this in the context of a business vision, right? So when I'm defining a business vision, I use these three C's, core purpose, core values, and client avatar, to get really, really clear in terms of, core purpose. What business are you specifically in? And what problems do you solve? What business are you in? And what problems do you solve? Because when you get clear about what business that you're in and what problems that you solve, and you're also very clear about your core purpose, meaning how would the world be worse off if you were no longer in business, right? Who would suffer if you were no longer doing what you did? Who is suffering if you're playing small, if you're not promoting your business the way that you should? Who is suffering? Think about that, right? And how would the world be worse off if you were no longer in business? That's a really important question. So that helps to define the core values of the business, right? So the core purpose really just defines where the business is and what problems you solve. And I mean specifically, don't say, well, I'm in real estate. No, 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 that's not near specific enough. You need to know, like, no, I am in single family real estate on the south side of town, and I work with these types of homes. Okay, great. That's perfect. But just saying, oh, I'm in real estate, it's way too broad. And it's if it's confusing to you or to the person you're trying to explain it to, it's not getting any clearer in their head, right? Like, so if it's confusing to you, it's absolutely confusing to them. So when you're looking at the core purpose and core values, when you're very clear on what it is that you do, what problems you solve, what your business stands for, why you're in business, how would the world suck if you were no longer in business? Now you start talking and thinking about your client avatar. And your client avatar is the ideal person that you want to that you want to serve. So think about this. I really like working with married business owners who have kids at home. If I'm being honest, I like working with married Christian business owners who have kids at home. They don't have to be, right? But if I'm aiming at a dartboard and the middle is the bullseye, and I'm like, okay, cool. And now will I take people who are in the 8, 9, or 10 ring? Sure. But if I'm getting too many sixes and sevens, they're probably a better client for someone else, right? Because their dartboard is a little bit moved off to the side, right? My six might be their bullseye. So that's also why it's important that you have a book inside you, because your avatar might be slightly different. You might be wanting to work with someone that's similar to mine, but not exactly. Maybe a little older, a little younger, right? Maybe they're not entrepreneurs. Maybe they're not even established business owners. Maybe they're in corporate, but they have something. We may have similar messages, but we have different avatar. So it's really important that you identify this client avatar. Now, do you think this attaches? Now, pay attention to the screen here. Do you think this works hand in glove with a book vision? It absolutely does. It absolutely does. The core purpose. What is the purpose of the book? Right? What is the book about, and what problems does the book solve? Think about that. What values are you trying to convey in the book? Meaning, like, your personal values. Like, how would the world be worse off if this book never got published? If people didn't hear this story in this way, right? Has anybody ever, especially if you raised children, right? It's like, man, I've told them X, Y, and Z a dozen times, but boy, the neighbor says something, and all of a sudden it's the most amazing thing ever, right? If you're a parent, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? I'm at parenting 503 right now because we've got a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And man, I'm telling you what, you ask me a parenting question, I have got an opinion. But I'll tell you what, the interesting thing about the interesting thing about having the being really, really clear in your values is it's going to come across in your writing. And that's really, really important because when you start thinking about this, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit around the type of language that you want to use in your writing is really important because that's going to display your values. And that's important. That really, really matters to your client avatar, right? So again, when you now we're talking about your client avatar, you can write to someone. It's really hard to write to anyone. Does that make sense? It's really hard. You can write to someone. It's really hard to write to anyone. So if you have this in mind, if you're writing this to the couple who's sitting there, who you know is flipping that page and goes, "Huh, hey honey, what do you think about this?" And they convey that to them sitting across, "Wow, where are you reading that out of?" "Oh, I'm reading that out of the Time Wealthy Advantage," right? Right? It's not a commercial and it may sound hokey, but that's exactly how conversations happen. That's exactly it. So or a phrase gets shared on social media like, "Oh my gosh, this was a mind blower. I couldn't believe when I read X, Y, and Z." Where'd you hear that from? "Oh man, it's out of this book." Right? Does that make sense? This is why it's so important to be so dialed into who you're writing it for. Because if you're going to try to write it to everybody, it will land with no one. It will land with nobody. So that is our why. And it really is important for you to start to recognize, why you're writing this in the first place. Like, again, there was a lot of people who, when I was starting to write the Time Wealthy Investor, there's a lot of people telling me, "Man, don't name it the Time Wealthy Investor. People aren't going to know it's a real estate book." I'm like, "Man, I don't, that's not, no." Like for me, it was really important. It was my book. I wanted to convey the whole thought around being time wealthy, not just financially wealthy, but time wealthy, because that's the thing that's getting missed. I feel that's the stitch or two that I can put back in the fabric of America that's getting torn because there's too many kids not growing up with parents, especially those who are in an entrepreneurial business ownership type family, which is what I grew up in. So everybody in my family was entrepreneurial. Everyone in my family had something to do with either the family business or their own business. That's just the way it was. So this is really clear. It's really important that you understand your why. Yeah, sure. Why are you writing the book? Establish authority, maybe for some healing, maybe to get your story out there, maybe because you want some notoriety, you want some significance. Maybe it's just a hill you're ready to climb. Cool. All cool. But you really got to be clear in terms of your why when you're writing it to your avatar in terms of core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Are we clear on that? We clear? Let's move on. So we talked about the why. Now we're going to talk about the where. All the wheres. Where, oh, where. All right. So, all right, enough alliteration other than that. I think I beat that to death. All right. Where are you going to write? This is a really important thing where you're going to write. And I want you to think about your best energy of the day, like specifically, where are you going to write? Because when you start thinking about where you're going to write, and it's like, well, I'll sit in front of the TV and write, or I'm going to sit on the couch and write, or I'm going to sit at my desk and write. And I want you to think about this because I want you to place yourself, like you've got to be careful about where you're putting yourself in the type of environment that you're putting yourself in, because you will be amazed at as soon as you start writing how much cleaning you have to do, right? It's like, "Oh my gosh, look at all the cleaning. Oh, wait, maybe I just need to go for a run, or maybe I need to do some jumping," whatever. Like you're going to have all this stuff that all of a sudden you're going to have to do. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Or am I the only one? Right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So it's really important that you set the environment because where you're going to write is not as important as recognizing the best energy of your day. When I like to write, it's really important that, if I'm going to write, I need to stage the environment. And when I'm staging the environment, it's, maybe it's free from distractions, but let's face it, for my ADHD brothers and sisters out there, listen, sometimes it's not about a distraction free environment. Sometimes it's in a very overly stimulating environment. Because for me, I do some of my best writing when I'm listening and I know why, right? But it's so bizarre. Someone will come in and I have a speaker that's connected to my, like via Bluetooth, and I'm listening to city noise. Does anybody know what I'm talking about with city noise? Like cars beeping, cars backing up, people like the sound of New York City, right? So as much as that place frustrates the living bejesus out of me, I actually do like the sound of the city sounds. I like it. And because it's so chaotic, it actually helps me focus. I don't know why. One thing that will not help me focus though is if I'm listening to music with lyrics. So, if I am listening to music, which does help me, like I'm all of a sudden I turn into a 97-year-old man because I'm listening to literally elevator music. But it does help engage my alpha state, which does help me become more creative. So it's just whatever works for you. So for those of you who are very distraction prone, sometimes it's literally shutting off the internet. Go shut off your damn router. Like unplug it. They do shut off. Like you don't need the internet a lot of times and you're like, "Man, but if I need to research something." Okay. You take a pen and write it down and research it later. But work in blocks of time of just 20, 30 minutes. Your concentration is like a muscle. It gets better with use, but you also have to recognize that that muscle needs rest. So if you're working for a 20 to 30 minute sprint, give yourself 10 to 15 minutes of rest, of just going out and going for a walk, right? Stay off social media because all of a sudden, before you know it, you jump on and 20-minute videos later, you have shot half your afternoon. All right. So be careful about that. And then, like I was mentioning up here, music with no lyrics. If that works for you, I like to do that on my breaks. I actually do enjoy like jazz, classical jazz, piano, things like that. Like I really do enjoy that kind of music, but it does tend to have the elevator music theme to it oftentimes. So where are you going to write? That's one of the things we talked about. And now we're going to talk about where are you going to save it? I cannot tell you how important this is to think about this and think about it now. Because even if you have written a book and you maybe want to do a new release or a new edition later on, you want to save and you want to back up and you have to think about how you're going to manage conflicted copies, especially if you're going to be sending this out to like beta readers, if you're going to be sending it out to an editor, you will wind up with conflicted copies. You're just going to. So one of the things I know people use Google Docs or whatever. I am one of the few people on the planet that's actually figured out Microsoft OneDrive. Yes, I can save a document and I can find it. Yes, I feel like I'm one of the chosen one. But if you are looking to save them, I would also pull out a handy dandy old fashioned thumb drive and save it to that. Now, what I would suggest is you want to save it with a specific file extension. So what I will say is like say today's July 22nd, I would save my work at the end of the day. I like to save especially if I'm working on two different laptops. So I have my big boy laptop that I'm working on here. It's got a much bigger screen, much bigger processor. I just like typing on it, but I have my smaller one here, and the smaller one is actually it boots up really fast. I can work on it and then I can shut it down if I've got like a quick thing that I want to type in there real fast. Or, oh man, I have this concept. I just want to get it out and get into we're going to talk about the ideas here in just a second. But I do keep that all on OneDrive. And about every couple of days, I'm saving the master to a thumb drive. Does that make sense? Because I don't want to have like my only file in OneDrive and then I can't find it if it gets corrupted or whatever. So I want to make sure that I've got those things. And I'm telling you, like, you're going to keep that as a forever file somewhere because as sure as God made little green apples, you're going to want to do a second edition or third edition and you can't find the original copy. You're recreating that thing from scratch. And that is weeks of work that you don't need to do. That's just crazy. So just make sure you have it kept somewhere. And I know you're like, well, why am I talking about backing up? Because this is such a big deal that people are like, man, I wish I had made a bigger point about this. You're hearing it from me now, so you don't have an excuse later on. So save your backups. Now here's the thing that we're going to talk about in terms of your ideas. Where are you going to capture your ideas? Once you start writing a book. Now, Billy, you're in the middle of writing your first book. Vicky, you're thinking about a book. Some of you have already written books. I will tell you that your ideas will come at no convenient time. You're like, oh my gosh, that would be so amazing. It's always when you're naked, in the shower, or you have nothing to write with, right? Or driving down the interstate at 90 miles an hour, right? And it's heavy traffic. So it's like, what the heck? That I'm just telling you, it part of that is because your brain goes into alpha mode, right? It's in your alpha state. And your alpha state's kind of like your daydreaming state when you're on a treadmill, when you're in the shower, when you're sitting on a lawnmower, when you're driving in traffic. It's just when you're doing very repetitive, low, very, very, easily motor skills when you're going for a run, things like that. This is when you're in your alpha state. That's very typical. So a lot of times, for those of you who are the ones who have their ideas when they're falling asleep? Where are you at? I know you're in here. I know you're in here. Okay. Yep. And Dora, some of you will have ideas as you're falling asleep. Like it's like, as soon as your head hits the pillow, it's like the monkey comes out of the box. So just keep a not on your phone, but go analog. Otherwise, it's going to keep you awake. The blue light on your phone, but just keep a light. Maybe a little pen light and a notepad by your bed so you can keep your notes. The point is, where are you going to keep these notes? Where are you going to keep these things? If you're going to keep a voice recorder, fine. If you're going to write these things down, fine. But you have to keep them somewhat consistent. And you also need to make sure that they make it into the file. And my recommendation is delete the damn file, because you will look at it and go, did I put that in there? Right? There's no reason for you to keep it. Get rid of it. Get rid of it, or somehow archive it in a way where you know that it's already been done. Because I have pages and pages of different notes in my phone. Does it, if you have I don't know if you have an iPhone or a normal phone. I've got a normal phone, and the Samsung has like a note taking feature, right? So I can put in there the notes. But the thing is, anytime I put the note in there, I'll delete the note, but I still keep the stuff in there running that's not in there yet. Like it's maybe not fully developed, not the thought isn't fully out there yet, or I don't know where to put it. So a lot of times I'll just create a heading in the book file, and I'll call it something. So if I'm talking about radishes, I'll put radishes, right? And then I'll put in my thought all about radishes, and then I'll, close the file. And I'm making, I don't write about food, so I'm just using, made up analogies here. So that's really important when you're trying to translate the stuff and the random thoughts that you have throughout the day into the file. Now, the other point that I want to make is whatever you're reading will flavor what you're writing. There's just no way around that. And I'm telling you, like, if you have the ability to separate that, you're amazing, because I don't know how you do it. And usually if I'm writing something about accounting and if I'm reading something about marketing, I'm going to want to take something from marketing and put it in that book. It's just the way it is. So you just have to be careful about what it is that you're reading at the time you're writing, because most people who are writers are also readers, and that's totally fine. Just make sure that it's not flavoring it too much. And you want to make sure that if you are reviewing a book, maybe that was the inspiration for writing your book, make sure you're reviewing that fairly frequently so you can keep your stuff in alignment. All right, so that is everything there. So we talked about the where. Now let's get into some of the heavier stuff, which is about the actual writing. So the thing that I want you to start to think about, again, we started talking about deciding not only a place, right, in terms of the where, but decide a pace and a rhythm. Start thinking about the length of the chapters. I like to think in word count. So when I'm looking at a chapter, somewhere between 2,000 to 3,000 words per chapter is about right for me. For you, you might say, oh my gosh, that's really long. I'm only thinking about 1,000 words per chapter, or I'm thinking about 5,000 words per chapter. Whatever, there's no right or wrong. It's just, it's whatever you are writing about. So decide the pace and rhythm of those, and start to think about this, and you'll start to get a sense of how long the book is going to be. So the other thing I want you to think about in terms of pace and rhythm is how often are you going to write? So if you're going to write every day, which is what I recommend, give yourself a day off. Like give it, whether it's a Sunday or whatever, but give yourself a day off, and you'll come up with different. Of course, that's the day that you're going to want to write, and also recognize that there's sometimes you're just going to get into the flow and you cannot stop. Listen, if you take nothing else away from what I'm going to talk about today, this is important why you enroll the people in your life to why you want to write this book. because I'm telling you, like last night, I was in flow. I could not shut my brain off. And man, I was like firing. I was putting all this stuff, these videos together. I was like, and it was around this course that I'm creating for writing, publishing and writing a book, specifically for business owners. And I was just putting some really good content out there. And I looked up and it was like 1:15, right? Not the polite one, the obnoxious one. And I was like, holy crap, 1:15 a.m. And I hadn't even really eaten yet. I was like, man, I do not want to go home and eat and then lay down and then get 5 hours worth of sleep because regardless of whatever time it is or whatever time I go to bed, I'm getting up at 6:30, just the way my brain works. So yeah, it's been a rough day a little bit, but that's just flow. And my bride, Jen, she understands. She's like, why'd you come home so late? I was like, well, sorry, I was working on this course. She's like, okay, no big deal. Like she understands it, but I enroll her into those ideas in advance. Because if I start, getting plugged into something and trying to find a landing spot, that can become a really big problem. Especially when things aren't right at home. So remember, that's your personal vision. Your personal vision is the main circuit breaker. So this book is not the most important thing. Your personal relationships are. So that's why personal vision comes first, and the business vision supports that. So not trying to preach, I'm just telling you that's the way. Because when things aren't right at home, things aren't right anywhere. When things aren't right at home, things are not right anywhere. So, so I want you to also establish a metric or a word count in terms of how much you're actually going to type. So start at the end of the day. At the end of the day, write in how many words you wrote or your ending count, and then look at your starting and stopping and how many words are you writing per day. It could be, just think about it, 250, 300 words a day. In a week's time, you've got a chapter, right? And in 10 weeks, you have a pretty good book. So I'm just saying, like, just start thinking about this right now in terms of what it is that it's really not going to take as much effort as you actually think it might. I want you to decide your point before you start. I have read some books that I'm like, wow, I have no idea what I just read. And it's not because now I've learned to speed read and it's a real skill, not just like glancing through words. Like I actually can technically speed read, and I didn't know that there was a difference until I actually learned it. I took a course by a guy named Jim Quick, Kwik. Absolutely recommend it. Best $200 I've ever spent in my life. Recommend it to anybody. But went through his speed reading course and I learned how to speed read, and I was like, holy crap, like I have no idea what this book is even about because the author didn't have a point in what they were writing. So I really want to make sure that you understand when you're taking that time to write about things that are like in advance. What am I writing? Like, what's the point that I'm trying to accomplish in this chapter? That's going to be really important for you to start to think about in advance. Okay. So, Netta, you're writing 500 to 1,000 words daily. Okay. Yeah. If that's the flow that you want, then no problem. Right. I'm just suggesting like it's really whatever it is that you can maintain. So don't feel like it's got to be a certain amount, but the main thing is you just don't want to be burned out, right? Don't like say like, oh man, I'm gonna do 10,000 words this weekend because you may not have nothing, you may not have anything left in the tank, or you get so burned from it you just don't want to go back to it. Remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So I also want you to decide on your language. Now, what do I mean by language? Language is like as much as it's easy to get lost in your words, it's also to get to forget what language that you're using. Now, I don't mean I mean like formal versus informal, or even swearing versus polite. So I do some like PG-13 swearing in mine. But I don't drop F bombs. You may. I'm not saying that's wrong. That doesn't work for me. You know why it doesn't work for me? Why wouldn't it work for me? Let me hear from you. Why would it not work for me? Who does it not match up with? Who does it not match up with? Let's see. Someone put it in the chat. Your core values and client avatar. Thank you. Yeah, Christian dads. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't Christian men who want to work with you. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't match up with them. So even and there was even one, like in the original part of my book, it was in my very first book, and I made a
Oh,
point
I'm sorry,
about,
sweetheart.
hi Cheryl. Um, so one of the things that, and it was in my very first book, and I made a comment about being a gun guy, and my editor had come back and said, "Man, I wouldn't put that in there. You might, really make some people mad." And I was like, "Man, I mean, I really struggle with this." And I was like, "Man, should I, shouldn't I?" And it wasn't about the gun thing. It was about what I wanted to write and what I wanted to put out there to my avatar. And after a while, I was like, no, that belongs in there because I'm a gun guy. And if someone comes to me and starts like railing on guns, and I'm like I'm a responsible gun guy, and they're like, yeah, but all, and they start, and that's not them. That's not my tribe. That's not my tribe. So I think being authentic, especially today in this age of AI and this age of social media, the ones who do the best are the ones who are the most authentic. So just be who you are. That's why it's also really important to know who your avatar is up front. So you can use that language. Other language again, to think you can talk about technical language versus story language, but you can also think about this in terms of phonetics. And there's a specific word for that, and I don't know what the word is, but it's when you write using a drawl. Does that make sense? So if you're writing like in a southern drawl, that doesn't always land with people. Like people are like, why is he writing weird? You just have to decide in advance how you're going to write. And that's you need to know like when I wrote the judge was a Southern Alabama judge. Now I didn't really write too heavily phonetic with him, but I did a little bit so people understood that he was a Southern Alabama judge. He spoke fast. He was kind of like like gruff, but he was caring. But like it was a really good. I think I did a really good job of connecting emotionally with who this Southern Alabama judge was. So it was really interesting. So decide. It's really important that you also decide on an accountability partner. And I'm just telling you this because when you are writing, I'm just telling you this is there 99.4% of people will not finish a book they start based on a statistic I completely made up. So I don't know what the statistic is, but it's pretty high because I have never run into a shortage of people like, oh, I still want to write a book someday. And I'm like, someday, open up your calendar and show me where someday is because it's not a day on the calendar that I can find. All right. So I'm just telling you when you have an accountability partner, right? There's something called goal contagion, that people are massively more likely to hit a goal when they're around other people who are also setting goals. So if even they don't have to be even the same goals. Like one could be weight loss and you could be writing a book. Doesn't matter. But goal contagion is a very real thing, and there are massive studies that back that up. And the other thing is too is that goal contagion can work the other way too. Is that like people who are if they give up on their goals, that that the people around them are also equally as likely to give up on their goals too. So it's good to have a group of folks so that way you're much less likely to give up. So I just want you to find an accountability partner. In terms of staying writing, stay organized as best you can. Organizing your thoughts. I like using index cards. I like going old school, but I've recently, actually for this, I use something called MindMup. It's mind mapping software. I've used it a little bit. I really like it because it's really just like taking the metaphorical index cards and just kind of putting them like you have this thought and you just start putting them down and organizing them the best you can. I really like mind mapping, and using index cards is the same type of thing. But stay organized as best you can because it's really going to make a difference when you are future pacing and using callbacks. Future pacing it's a literary technique. Comedians use it all the time. Did you notice when I did a future pacing earlier? Hey, we're going to talk about this in a little bit. That's future pacing. And every book you have read that's well written does that. They do future pacing and they'll say, "Hey, in a chapter coming up, we're going to talk about this, but right now all you need to know is this." That helps move the reader along. That gives them some anticipation like, "Oh, cool, I can't wait to learn about that." Or when they do a callback. Callbacks are easier because you've already written about it. So future pacing is a little bit more tricky. Um, Here's what I'm going to recommend. If you're going to do that, when you're writing, you can say, hey, we're going to talk about this in chapter X. Okay. Now, you might already know it's going to be in chapter 9. Do not put it in, don't write this right now. You're going to say, as discussed in chapter X. Why is that? Because as sure as anything, you're going to put down, like, you might move chapter 9 to chapter 14, and now it's going to be wonky. All right. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. So I highlight it and just put chapter X. The other thing is, when I'm putting these in, I want to think about the citations and resources that I'm using. And the citations and resources, these are just different things. You have to think about this. Am I going to use a citations page at the end where I'm just going to put like a little 3, or am I going to write it in the text of the book? My writing style, I like putting it in the text of the book. I like saying, hey, this research from this book, from this author, recites this. And you don't necessarily need to list the page if you don't want to. But I will say having an index, especially for a research type book, is really helpful. Like one of my very best researched books. I love this book. I'm several books that I really enjoy. The Willpower Instinct by Dr. Kelly McGonigal, fantastically researched book. Very, just a powerful book on brain science. There's one that I'm reading right now called The Leadership Challenge by, I think it's Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner. Very, very well researched. And they've got a whole index of just various works cited in the back. So really, really, this is where you're just going to decide if you're going to do that. But just make sure that you're making notations along the way about the works that are cited. You're going to talk about the use of writer's notes. The writer's notes are really important for you to use along the way to say, hey, I'm thinking about this, but make sure you mention this earlier on. So a writer's note is where you're literally putting in some sort of bracket, highlight it, and it's just a writer's note. It'll be deleted in the final edition. Okay. So make sure when you're using that literary, crutch, if you will, just make sure you highlight it so it doesn't end up, because it'll look weird. You're like, why did they leave that in there? It should be deleted. And I've seen stuff like that just because of editors missed stuff. All right. So we talked about all these. We talked about the why, the where, the writing. Now we're going to talk about the most important thing. Now, even though this is the most important thing, this is actually going to be the shortest part of this presentation. Promotion. You do not wait until the book is published to promote your book. You need to promote your book at a minimum 6 months prior. 6 months prior. And that's exactly what I started doing. As I started posting stuff out there, I would literally take 3 or 4 chapters that were interesting to read and put a photo up there for attention and just post it, and excerpted from page 7 of this book to be released in, spring of 2026, whatever. Like, make sure, like, that's a great way to start building that attention. Like, oh my gosh, I really want to, I can't wait to buy a copy. Cool. Your name is now on the list. So that's what I'm saying in terms of promotion. You cannot wait. And this is where you just start releasing snippets, prior to, get book buyers gathered in different Facebook groups. This could literally be like an hour and a half topic easily. Unfortunately, I just don't have the time to get into all of this, but you have to make sure you promote, because I'm telling you, no one, and I'm living proof that just because you publish something, no one cares. No one cares. No one cares that you published a book. After your immediate family buys the book, no one else will buy it. So unless you've got a very, 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 very large family, your sales are going to suffer. So promotion, top to bottom, you cannot skimp on that. Let's talk about publishing. Now, there's 2 ways to go. You can work with, or 3 ways basically. You can work with an agent, you can self-publish, or there's a hybrid model. I really don't know much about the hybrid model, with the exception of self-publishing and working with an agent. When you're working with an agent, you're just giving up a lot of intellectual rights. And for me, working with an agent really didn't make sense for me, just because I had distribution channels. I have a pretty sizable following on social media. I have several thousand on YouTube. I have lots of people in my email list. I have, several thousand on Facebook. I mean, I have a lot of people that I can push and promote things out to, not to mention speaking engagements and all the other things that I can do. So I just want you to think about this, when you're looking at promotion, is that whatever you don't pay for in dollars, you give up in control. Does that make sense? Whatever you don't pay for in dollars, you give up in control. So in other words, if you're going to say, okay, cool, I'm going to get this to an agent so they can promote and do the fulfillment and everything else, fine, but you're giving up to the rights to the intellectual property that's in your book. And if you're okay with that, that's okay. It's not a bad thing. Lots of authors do that. I'm just letting you know, for me, maintaining the control of my intellectual property was very important. But I also knew how to promote the book. So the book cover design, everyone always worries about the book cover design first. That's actually the last thing that you want to worry about. Because what you should be worrying about first and foremost is the title and subtitle. The title is the hook. That's the hook, and really what's important. Now, again, when I started calling the book The Time Wealthy Advantage or The Time Wealthy Investor, people are like, why are you calling it that? Because time wealthy, I want that to become a very common phrase, is being time wealthy. It's not just being financially wealthy, it's also having complete control over your calendar. So, which includes financial wealth, but it also includes lifestyle design. So I wanted that as a book title, but the subtitle of a book is the promise. Okay, you'll see what I mean. So there's let's look at this book. Okay, say The Game of Life and How to Play It. Okay, so it doesn't have a subtitle, but it's just got the title on there. This one, let's look at this. This is one of my favorite authors, Almost Alchemy. I'm just picking these books up at random. So this is the title, Almost Alchemy. Subtitle, Make Any Business of Any Size Produce More with Fewer and Less. That's the promise. So if you think about the subtitle, like that's the promise of the book. Hey, if I read this book, that's what it's going to deliver. Does that make sense? That's really important for you to figure out. Now, when you're doing this, right, I'll give you an example. So when I was coming up with the Time Wealthy Advantage, I knew that was the title. That was non-negotiable. But I didn't know the subtitle, right? Or the subheading, if you will. So I came up with two different options. A business owner's 5-step strategic blueprint to freedom and a business owner's strategic blueprint to freedom. So guess what I did? I tested it, right? I sent it out to people who represented my avatar. Okay? So when I was putting my book out, right? So I hadn't decided on the book cover yet, but I was trying to figure out what the subheading was going to be. I sent it out to my avatar. Now, guess what I was doing? Hey, can I ask your opinion on something? I sent it out to them. What was I doing? By doing that? I just talked about it. What's item 4? Promoting. I was promoting. I was building excitement. And I asked hundreds of people. Yeah, I asked hundreds of people in addition to promoting because I really wanted their feedback. I really needed to know, which of these do you like? Okay. Now, ironically enough, neither one of these two ended up to the final cut because when I did, it was actually a strategic approach to building the life and business you want. It was similar, but not the same. And this one was voted like almost 2-1 over any other option. So that's the one I went with. So I tested because does it matter what I want the subtitle to be? Not at all. I'm not the one buying the book. They are. They're the one buying the book. That's why I wanted to make sure that I got it in front of as many people as possible. And you're not going to get unanimous. I mean, it's not going to. There's always going to be somebody that's going to say something's different. So that's why I'm saying when you're working with that, you want to test. Let's talk about Amazon and KDP. These are again, these are Amazon and KDP is the 800-pound gorilla. I don't really have time to get into going into how to manage that and maneuver that. That is something that I'm building a course around. So I'm going to have to leave that there, but there's a lot to know in terms of this, but it is actually pretty straightforward. It's not hard. It's just a lot. And knowing your own ISBN number or owning your own ISBN number, I recommend going to a broker like Bowker because you can get an ISBN number that's an international standard book number is ISBN. Every book has to have it. And when you have that, you have much more control over where you want your book distributed. when you have it assigned by Amazon, they kind of, again, they kind of control things. So again, if you're giving up, you're saying, "Oh, we can do it for you." Okay, but you're giving up stuff on the other side. For most people, it doesn't matter because distribution is fairly limited. But if you plan on have on a distribution or expanded distribution outside, it is nice to have your own ISBN number. So you can go to Bowker. You can buy one for like 150, or you can buy 10 for 250. Yeah, I it's like they went with pharmacy math on that. I have no idea. Do you ever like buy like twice so much as something? It ends up being like three times more in the same bottle. Yeah, I don't even know. That's pharmacy math. All right. So when you're publishing on Audible and you're actually creating an ebook, actually, if you're creating an ebook, you don't need an ISBN number. You can get one if you want, but you actually don't need one. At least as of right now. If you're publishing on Audible, this is like I have a professional studio. I also have all the software to help edit. It's a lot. If you don't have that, you're not going to do it on your phone. Like you can, but I'm just telling you, like it's going to be very difficult. So I'm just saying, like, really consider doing it in a studio because I'm telling you, the listeners, like everybody listens to Audible now, and I would absolutely recommend that you put it on there, but you cannot put it on Audible unless you also have an ebook. Does that make sense? So you have to have an ebook. So the order you publish, then you can publish either hard copy or soft copy on Amazon. Then you publish the ebook. Then you publish on Audible. And it goes in that order. And Audible takes like 20 days to publish. So if you think you're going to release them both like at the same day, it doesn't work that way. So I'm just letting you know how that works. The nice thing about self-publishing is that, especially on Audible or on KDPs, you can do revisions. And I know we're going a little over an hour, so I'm going to land the plane here in just a few more minutes. So you can do revisions, but just keep in mind. So here are all my books here. Okay. These are my books. If you go to the back of the book, okay, there is this little thing here that's printed that tells you when it was printed. Okay. Now, on this edition, there's a mistake on the back of the book. It's driving me nuts. But I fixed it. But guess what? Amazon, because I know that they sell a lot of books from me, they printed like I don't even know how many copies of this. So they might have already pre-printed like 100 copies. I have no idea. So until they run through that, that mistake's going to be there because I did fix the mistake. And if you look at it online, it is fixed. But if you look at it when you get the physical copy, actually you're getting old inventory. So I just want to keep in mind that if you do like try to get it, even though you can do revisions, you really want to make sure that you have as good a final copy as possible. It's a small mistake. It's not a big deal. And no one ever notices. I actually have to point it out to them. But the nice thing about having in self-publishing is that you can do revisions. Just understand too, I just want to make this point, I don't know where to throw this in there, but understand the limitations of editors. Editors are not gonna, they're not gonna miss things like continuity, right? So if you start talking about one thing and then you wander off into another area, a lot of times, unless the editor is really an expert in your field, they're not going to catch stuff like that. So you have to understand the limitations of editors. This is also why you want to have beta readers. So if Vicky is writing a book on real estate, her coming to me or Billy Reuter or Gary Aker, or Judy would make sense, or Tashin, because we're real estate people. That would make sense. That would make sense. So if she was writing, a book for children, she could bring it to me because I'm basically a giant child. But, other than that, she would want to make sure that she's bringing it to someone, other people that understand that genre. Make sense? So this is why you have to make sure that in terms of continuity, editors do have limitations and you want to employ beta readers. And beta readers, a lot of times, these are even people you don't necessarily pay. Sometimes you could, but these are generally your friends, your family, and these are people who will be honest with you. If they say, like, hey, how was my book? And they go, oh, it's good. That tells you nothing, right? Like, okay, fine, but I need like the real honest, brutal, like, you don't need to be brutal, but just be honest with me. I need to know like what, how is it flowing? What's this? What's that? And don't take offense. Just listen to the feedback because I know it's your baby, right? But if it's going to be good, no one wants to hear that their baby is ugly, but sometimes we write some turds. So if it's going to be good, make sure you're willing to take your feedback. All right. That is all that I have. So that's everything here. One quick thing I do want to, I am willing to stick around for some questions. I'm just going to go ahead and hit this really fast. So anybody who wants to drop off, I'll do this really fast. I'm going to hit stop on the record button. If you guys have any questions, you can ask whatever you want because it will not be recorded. But let me just go ahead and do this really quick. If you would like a signed copy of the Time Wealthy Advantage, that's this book right here. That's the book on the screen. That's my latest book. It really is designed for business owners and walks people through the vision, the Viper method, and everything else. Again, it's cheaper than Amazon. The free bonus gift that I'm going to throw in there is obviously a 45-minute call with me. And I'm also going to give you a reduced pricing on the course that I'm actually creating for this very thing. But understand that writing and publishing a book, I'm going to direct it towards people who are in business and using books as lead magnets. So I am going to put that together. You can get everything for one price. So you can go in there. If you want just the book, there'll be an option. You can get it for $28.97. If you want the book and all 4 guides, that's an extra $20. And if you want that, or just the book and the course, it'd be $38.97, and you can order the 4 guides on top of that if you want to. So that is all I have. Let me kill the share. Actually, let me share with you the. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share. I will put the link to purchase that in the chat, and then I will stick around for some questions. So let me stop the share, and I will stop the recording.